Right, so you want to find your flow right, especially when it comes to creativity. And we all know balancing structure and spontaneity, that's the key. Well, we've been digging into this piece. It's called The Harmony of Chaos, and it's got some pretty interesting ideas. Seems like it's from this design studio, Ronin Graphics, and they're all about finding that sweet spot, between harmony and chaos. Makes sense, right? They say that's where creativity really takes off, when you got a good mix of structure and spontaneity. They even compare it to something like, get this, jazz improvisation.
It's a great comparison. Think about it. In jazz, you need to know the rules first, right? The scales, the chord progressions, all that. It's like you can only really break free and improvise once you've got those fundamentals down. And honestly, that's true in so many areas, right? Like whether you're talking about a scientist making some big discovery or an athlete pulling off this incredible move, it often comes down to years of mastering the basics, and then that's what lets them have that inspired, spontaneous action.
Right. So it's like you got to know the rules so well that you can bend them, without completely breaking them. Speaking of bending the rules, this Ronin Graphics piece, they share some stories about their own team and how they put this into practice. They've got this one UI/UX designer. Her name's Emma, and she is incredibly organized. I'm talking like color-coded to-do list, the whole 9 yards. But get this, she swears by dedicating time for, she calls them chaos hours, where she just lets her mind wander. So is there actual science behind that? Giving yourself that unstructured time? Or is that more like a personal preference kind of thing?
It's actually not just some quirky habit. There's a lot of research out there on something called, diffuse thinking. It's this idea that when you step away from focused work and let your mind wander a little, your subconscious can actually get to work. Like it starts connecting ideas in ways you might not expect. Those aha moments we always hear about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of times they happen during those periods of diffuse thinking.
So it's not about goofing off. It's like this strategic pause, like you're giving your brain a break so it can make those creative leaps. I love that. Now, Ronin Graphics also talks about controlled chaos, and they've got the story about one of their tech guys, James. He's all about logic and structure, especially in his coding, but he figured out a way to sprinkle in a little controlled chaos into his work, to make it feel a bit more human, more relatable. And get this, it actually started impacting his personal life too. He started taking more risks, being more spontaneous, just shaking things up in general. And it sounds like it really had a positive impact on him. Have you found that to be true in your own life at all?
It makes sense when you really think about it. Our brains, they thrive on novelty. Even small changes, like just changing up your routines a bit or trying new things, can spark creativity. Yeah. And it can boost your overall well-being too. It's like giving your brain a little workout. Challenging it to adapt, see things from a different angle.
Brain workout. I like that. Okay, so we've got Emma with her scheduled chaos hours. We've got James bringing controlled chaos to his coding. And then there's Sally. So Sally, she's a print designer at Ronin Graphics. And apparently she used to have a real problem with perfectionism. They even have this quote from her in the piece. She said, "Design, like life, isn't about achieving perfection. It's about finding beauty in the imperfections, about harmonizing the chaos into something meaningful." Powerful stuff, right? Sounds like she really took those words to heart and found a way to loosen up a little bit, not needing everything to be absolutely perfect. But what are your thoughts on perfectionism? Can it actually, get in the way of creativity?
Yeah, perfectionism, it's a tricky one. I mean, it seems like, if you're striving for flawlessness, you should end up with amazing results, right? Yeah. But in reality, a lot of times it's the opposite. When you're so afraid of making a mistake, you end up holding back. You don't take as many risks or explore those new ideas. Yeah. You get so focused on the right way of doing things that you miss out on those unexpected discoveries.
Right, the ones that happen when you just let yourself experiment.
Exactly.
And maybe even, make some mistakes along the way. It's like that saying, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, right?
Exactly. And you know what I find so interesting about the way Ronin Graphics approaches this? Mm-hmm. They're not just saying, okay, everyone go out and be chaotic. Yeah. It's about controlled chaos. Being intentional about it. Mm-hmm. Where does it make sense to incorporate spontaneity in your life and in your work?
It's about finding that balance again, that harmony between structure and spontaneity. And that applies to, so many aspects of life, don't you think? It's not just about creative work, really.
Oh, absolutely. This whole harmony of chaos principle, you can apply it to your relationships, your personal growth, even your health and well-being. It's about recognizing that life is this constant dance back and forth between order and chaos. And it's up to each of us to find that rhythm, the one that works best.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's say you're listening to this right now and you're feeling stuck, like things are a bit too structured, too predictable. What's a good first step to kind of inject a little of that controlled chaos into things?
I'd say start by thinking about where you're craving a little more, spontaneity or excitement. Maybe there's a hobby you've always been curious about but never tried, or a new skill you'd love to learn, or even, just a different part of town you've been meaning to explore.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything huge. Sometimes just taking a different route to work or checking out a new restaurant can be enough, just to shake things up a bit and get those creative juices flowing.
It's true. Even small changes, they can have this ripple effect. The key is to be intentional about introducing those little bits of novelty and then pay attention to how they make you feel.
Right. So what sparks your curiosity? What brings you joy?
Exactly. Once you start paying attention to those things, you'll naturally find yourself gravitating towards activities and experiences that help you find that balance.
So it sounds like this harmony of chaos thing, it's really about figuring out what works for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly.
It's all about experimenting, being open to new things, and trusting your gut.
Precisely. And remembering that it's a journey, not a destination. There's no magic formula or finish line where we suddenly achieve perfect balance. It's this ongoing process, exploring and discovering as you go.
And sometimes it's about embracing those imperfections, right? Like Sally from Ronin Graphics said, that's where the real beauty is often found.
Absolutely. It's in those imperfections, those unexpected turns life takes, that we find our greatest inspiration and growth.
Well said. We've talked a lot about this whole harmony of chaos thing from Ronin Graphics' perspective. But I'm curious, how does this resonate with you on a personal level? Have you found that balance in your own life?
It's funny you asked that.
You were saying it's funny I asked about finding that balance. What have you found works in your own life?
Well, it definitely has been a journey, that's for sure. I've realized that for me, it's really about being intentional, about creating space for both structure and spontaneity.
Yeah.
It can't be all one or the other. Like I have my routines, my systems, all that to stay organized. Got to stay on track, right? Mm-hmm. But then I also make sure to schedule in time for just unstructured exploration. Could be reading something totally different than what I normally go for, trying out a new creative hobby, or even just taking a walk with no real destination in mind, just seeing where I end up.
It's like giving yourself permission to play, even when you have a really structured life. It reminds me of something we were talking about earlier, that whole idea of approaching life like it's a design project.
Yeah.
How do you think that idea connects to finding this balance between harmony and chaos?
If we each look at our lives as this design project, we become the architects of our own experience, right? We can experiment with different structures and systems, routines and habits, and then we see what sticks, what really works for us.
It's like any good design, you got to iterate, try things out, see what kind of feedback you get, then make adjustments.
Exactly.
So it's about paying attention to those little cues we get along the way, right? Like, when do we feel energized and aligned with what we're doing, and when do we feel drained, like we're stuck?
Exactly. It's all about being present, being aware of how different activities and environments, even different people, how they make us feel. Like if you notice certain tasks always leave you feeling depleted, maybe it's time to rethink how you're approaching them. Maybe you can even delegate some of them. And on the flip side, if there are certain places or people that just make you come alive, it's worth exploring those connections further.
I love that. So in that design process of life, where do you find most people could benefit from adding a little bit more controlled chaos?
Well, it's different for everyone, obviously. But I think for a lot of people, it comes down to being more open to new experiences, new perspectives. Even just stepping outside of your comfort zone a little bit can make a huge difference. It helps us break free from those old ways of thinking. And that can unlock so much creativity and innovation. And it doesn't have to be anything huge either. It could be as simple as striking up a conversation with someone you wouldn't normally talk to, or trying a new type of cuisine, maybe taking a different route on your morning commute just to shake things up.
It's amazing how those small shifts can have such a big impact.
It's like we're sending a signal to our brains saying, hey, we're ready for something new. Bring on the possibilities.
I love it. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation, such a fascinating deep dive. We started with this piece from Ronin Graphics about finding harmony in chaos within a design studio, and it's really blossomed into this much broader exploration. It's about how we can apply these principles to our entire lives, not just our work.
I couldn't agree more. It's been a real pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And to all of you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you some things to think about, some inspiration as you continue on your own journey of finding that perfect balance, that sweet spot between structure and spontaneity. And remember, it's not about achieving perfect balance all the time. Life's messy, right? It's really about embracing that dance between harmony and chaos. It's about finding the rhythm that works best for you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep diving deep.